Sir, you can start now.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. A good afternoon to all of you. This course is titled MPSE 009. The title of the course is Canada, Society and Politics. Today is the fourth class of this particular course. This is part of the master's course in Migration and Diaspora Studies, MAMIDI. In the first three classes, we have covered all the way from how Canada emerged as a settler colony, as a staple economy, all the way to different social movements, Aboriginal class, the civil society, federalism, public administration, political parties, emergence of political parties, the multi-party system. So the whole array of different aspects of Canadian society, Canadian politics, we took care of that. Just a very brief recap before I come to today's class, which is also again connected with the class that we took last week, and also the week before. In the classes so far, basically we talked, as I said, about the settler colony. Basically, the French came to Canadian societies, which is the largest in the Western Hemisphere and the second largest in terms of area in the whole world after Russia. And then the British came and they colonized both British and the French over the Canadian territories for a long, long time before Canada attained the Dominion status and later on became fully independent through mostly, I think, the two acts, 1867 and also 1931. It's a very important country. It has got very vibrant and robust relations with many countries in the world, including the country to the north, to the United States of America, to European Union, to India, to France, to Japan, to Southeast Asia, Latin America, to literally all over the world. It's a part of the United Nations. They have contributed significantly to the UN peacekeeping operations at various places, to the NATO operations. It's a part of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Canada is also a part of the G7 group of countries, as well as the G20 countries. If you remember 2 years ago, when the G20 summit conference took place in New Delhi, India, Canada was represented by the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was the Prime Minister at that point of time. And now we have a different Prime Minister, and as I have said before, Canada is going to have an election in a week's time on 28th of April, and we'll get to know who is going to win, which political party is going to win in this upcoming election, and who is going to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Canada has got 7 regions: Pacific Coast, Cordillera, Prairies, the Canadian Shield, the Great Lakes region, the St. Lawrence, Lowlands, the Atlantic provinces, Appalachian region, and the Arctic. 10 provinces, as you all know: Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and the 3 territories, and mostly the Aboriginal tribes, they live in these territories: the Northwest Territories, Yukon Territory, and Nunavut Territories. Very quickly on Aboriginal tribes, I mean, overall, I think if you look at in terms of percentage, they are 3%. But if you look at their population in those 3 territories, namely the Northwest Territories, Yukon, and Nunavut, I think they form a significant number. They are a distinctive class. They have got certain unique characteristics, and the Canadian government has provided through some acts and statutes some very specific designated facilities and privileges to this particular Aboriginal tribe, one of the oldest ones in the Canadian societies, in fact, in North America. Canada has also a very strong, from a unilateral society, unicultural society to bicultural to multicultural societies. I think Canada has come a long way in terms of the cultural homogeneity, in terms of economy, agriculture, grain, oil seed, vegetable, dairy product, wheat, barley, horticulture, I think on many areas, they're very much ahead of many countries in the world. Just one quick example, when President Donald Trump of the United States tried to impose the economic tariffs, the duties on Canadian products coming to US, about 25%, which is a very steep one. Canada also retaliated because Canada also has got a lot of trump cards to play, and they did that. Uh, in terms of the forest products, pulp and paper, Canada has a lot. Canada, in fact, produces one of the largest amount of newspaper prints in the world. 70, as per one record, I think almost 75% of the newspaper print in the world are being produced by Canada. Canada also produces a lot of industries and trades in minerals in terms of zinc, potash, uranium, titanium, nickel, gold, lead, copper, iron, platinum. So they have got a huge range of mineral resources to their credit. In terms of GDP, Canada is currently seventh. In terms of gross domestic product, it's the largest trade partner of US. That's why when Trump decided to hit Canada with tariffs, I think Canada retaliated. So I think Canada does have, as I said, a lot of ways in which they also have a significant leverage in terms of trade and commerce with the rest of the world. And they have got relations with all the countries, as I have repeated. Constitution of Canada basically took more important steps through the British North America Act of 1867, when they got number of rights and privileges little by little, slowly and slowly from Great Britain. Basically, I think Canada is a liberal democratic society. They value rule of law, they value democracy, they value accountability, they value limited government, they do have checks and balance, they do have transparency in government, and they try to usher in good governance in many aspects. Of course, there is always room for improvement, and there is always the ongoing process, as it is happening in the rest of the world in almost all the democratic societies. They follow a federal system in which there is a parliament consisting of two chambers, the Senate and the House of Councillors, the Senate being the upper chamber and the House of Council is the lower chambers. They also have a head of state who is the Governor General, who acts as the nominee of the British monarch or the British king. So technically, I think British king, for example, in this case, King Charles, he is the head of state of Canada, but in reality, the Governor General, who is from Canadian origin, he serves on behalf of the monarch in Ottawa, the capital, the federal capital of Canada. In terms of Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is a part act of 1982, they have got fundamental freedoms. As you know, fundamental freedoms in most part of the world is like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of movement, all freedom of religion, basically all the freedoms that we enjoy in modern societies, whether it is India or United Kingdom or Australia, United States of America, etc. Democratic rights, mobility rights, legal rights. They have got all the legal rights. So, for example, if any person is arrested, they have the right to remain silent under the Miranda doctrine, under invoking the rights in Article 5. Equality rights, official language rights, minority rights, educational rights, protection of Aboriginal people, supremacy of the Constitution, that is one of the cornerstone of Canada, the multilateralism, universal franchise, anybody above the age of 18, he or she has the right to exercise the right to vote, fundamental freedoms, independence of judiciary. They have the Supreme Court, the highest court is in Ottawa, the federal capital, but they also have provincial courts in different places like Edmonton, like Toronto, etc., etc. Canada is not a republic. The big difference, as I've said before, between a republic and a constitutional monarchy is in a republic, the head of state is elected. Like in India, we say India is a republic because every 5 years we have an election for the office of the president, who is the head of state, and somebody wins, and whoever that person is, whether it's a he or a she, that becomes the head of state, becomes the president. And that's why I called it the republic. In a country like Canada, it is a constitutional monarchy. It is constitutional. That part is important. It's significant. But it is also a monarchy because the king or the queen of England, previously it was Queen Elizabeth, who was the queen for a long, long time. And after her passing away, King Charles has taken over and he's the king. He's the head of state. And ipso facto, he's also the head of state in Canada. But the Governor General represents on behalf of the King of England, and basically he is the de facto in Canada. In terms of the political parties, as I've said, they have got number of political parties. The Labour Party, the Liberal Party, which is currently in power, Mark Carney, he is the current Prime Minister of Canada after Justin Trudeau resigned a couple of weeks ago. The leading opposition party leader, he is from the Conservative Party. His name is Pierre Poilievre. So I think basically in this election that you will see next week, on the 28th of April, is between Carney's party, the Liberal Party, and the Conservative Party, the Poilievre. The parliament consists of currently 105 Senate members from the Senate, from the upper house, and 338 people from the lower house, the House of Councillors. Okay, so altogether there are 443 members. There are also other political parties. They are also very important. NDP, for example, New Democratic Party. Currently, Jagmeet Singh, he is the head of the NDP, and NDP is very, very powerful, particularly in provinces, western provinces like British Columbia, Alberta, etc. They also have got other parties like Parti Quebec and many political parties. So it is a multi-party system, just like India or Australia or many other countries that we see. In terms of federalism, yes, they have federal patterns. They also have a provincial government. There are certain powers which are designated exclusively to the federal government. For example, under Section 91, as I have said, the federal government has exclusive domain and exclusive turf and power over foreign affairs, over defense, trade and commerce, transport, communication, banking, and currency. So these are some of the areas in which the federal government does have exclusive monopoly or the dominance. The provincial governments, the 10 provinces, whether it is Ontario or Quebec or British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, whatever, and they have got powers under Section 92, natural resources, administration of justice, prison, municipalities, hospitals, sale of public land, local workers. So these are the areas in which the provincial government does have dominance. Education is all under Section 93, in which if there is a conflict between the federal government and the provincial government, the federal government prevails. There are also some concurrent powers which are shared concurrently between both the federal government and the state government, and that is guaranteed under Section 95, which is issues like agriculture, issues like immigration, who can be immigrated, who is not, what are the rules, what are the regulations, what are the changes that need to be made. These are all done under Section 95. The pension issue is done under Section 94A, and this is again another interesting peculiar thing. Unlike in education, where the federal government prevails in case of a dispute or a conflict with the provincial government, in the case of pension system, because Canada has one of the strongest and most vibrant pension system for the social, as part of the social security under Section 94A. But if there is a conflict between the federal government and the state government, it is the provincial government that prevails in the case of pension. There are also some residual and special powers that are given to the provinces and other places also. If you look at the different phases of federalism, I think it has gone through a number of phases, depending on the circumstances, depending on the situation. For example, the phase one, quasi-federalism, 1867 to 1887, those 20 years. Quasi means not fully federal, but partly federal. Okay. Then again, the power swung back to the provinces, 1896 to the beginning of World War I, which is 1914. Then 1914 to 1919, those 5 years, because of the unique situation, unusual situation in the world, namely World War I, it is emergency federalism. Again, the provincial power reverted back to them after the war was over, meaning World War I, from 1920 to 1930. Then again, at the beginning of 1929, when the Great Depression took place, and after that, of course, the World War II started, 1939 to 1945. Again, it was back to the federal government, which was more powerful. Since 1970s, it is mostly like a cooperative arrangement between the federal and the state. There has also been occasions in Canada in recent times when one single political party has not been able to gain majority. So in those cases, there has been coalition government. For example, the current government that we see in Canada, in Ottawa, at the federal level, it is a coalition government. The dominant partner, of course, is the Liberal Party of Mark Carney, but NDP is also a partner of this particular government, okay? As it was there a couple of years ago, also with Justin Trudeau. Canada also has got a very strong local self-government and also municipal council that you see in the big metropolitan cities like Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. They also have got city governments, town government, villages, rural areas. Canada has a huge area which are also in the rural hinterlands. If you just go outside 40, 50 miles from any big cities, whether it is Edmonton, Calgary, Halifax, Toronto, etc., London, Ontario, Waterloo, etc., I think you will see some of these aspects of the rural Canada. They also have municipal councils. They do have accountability, politics, coordination, etc., etc. Public administrations, basically, I think they follow any particular democratic model. In most cases, they follow the meritocracy, meaning all the appointments are made based on merit. Whoever is the best, he or she gets to that particular position. But they also follow affirmative action in some aspect, particularly the people from the native people, for women, for handicapped people, for Aboriginal people. Affirmative action meaning certain designated positions meant exclusively for them on an equal employment opportunities on affirmative action, designated specifically for those people. They also have got, like, as part of the new public management and as part of good governance, Canada also has adopted a lot of the new practices of governance like e-governance, digital governance, etc., etc. In all different aspects, everything is loaded there, just the way we see in many of those democratic societies. So in nutshell, I think what we see is as part of the good governance and also as part of the evolving party systems, particularly in the post-Cold War, in the post-90s, multi-party systems, ideologically pragmatic system, leader-oriented systems, organized and well-funded, relying on different socio-economic ethnic bases. Also, we see a growing assertive partisan atmosphere in different ways, and etc., etc. The different political parties I talked about, Liberal Party, Conservative Party, Reform Party, Party Quebec, they are the party of dominance. So I think maybe in the foreseeable future, instead of one party dominance, maybe we'll see a plethora or a combination of different political parties. In terms of social movements and NGOs, we have got different environmental movements like the Greenpeace, Earth Canada, Sierra Club Canada, Go for Green. So basically, the whole idea is to make the Canadian societies clean and green. And I think a lot of initiatives are being done in that particular way in terms of agriculture, waste management, soil conservation, water quality, sustainable agriculture, uh, trying to conserve the resources, water quality management, sustainable management. I think if you look at basically all those 10 MDG, Millennium Development Goals that was propounded by the United Nations, and further after a couple of years when they did the UN, United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, Canada has been at the leading edge of the, both Millennium Development Goal and Sustainable Development Goal in terms of reducing child mortalities, nutrition, having a clean society, clean energy, etc., etc. I think in all those aspects, I think Canada will get a lot of high marks in those areas. And that is happening all over in all 10 provinces, in all 3 territories, natural resources. They have a very strong federal department and they take care of that. Environmental Canada, Transport Canada, climate change. Canada was also in the forefront, taking a very strong stand in Paris climate talk, in Kyoto Protocol, in Copenhagen Accord, etc., etc. Biodiversity, federal, provincial governments that pay a lot of attention to different aspects of biodiversity. Energy issues, Canadian Environmental and Assessment Act, the nuclear safety, health safety. So those are the areas in which Canada also take care of the issues related to energy. On forest conservation, Canada has a Canadian Forest Service, forest health, climate change, forest diversity, forest ecosystem, landscape management, etc., etc. Uh, Fresh water, Canada has a lot of fresh water areas like Lake Ontario, Lake St. Lawrence, etc. Canadian Water Resources Association, Canadian Plumbing and Heating Association, reducing the water use. So Canada is also a leading power in terms of managing pretty well, rather, the fresh water issues. Waste and hazardous materials, integrated waste management, reduction of source. Canada also takes very strategic use, or rather, I would say reuse, recycling, and recovery of the energy resources. Canada also was an important member of the post-globalized world. That is also an important constituency, and they strongly feel that globalization is going too far, and they have also have an anti-globalization network over there. So I think they are very forefront and very feisty about the issues on globalization uh, on many different areas, whether it is reducing greenhouse gas emission, protection of endangered species, the cooperative biodiversity programs, tackling land degradation, conservative of fishery resources, etc., etc. On Aboriginals, all I have to say is that yes, the Métis, the Inuits, Eskimos, uh, most of these people, although they are only 3% of the entire Canadian population, but most of them are located and situated in those northwest territories, in Nunavut, in Yukon territories, and they do have some specific power. Over the years, in the last 20, 30, 40 years, number of new statutes and new acts that have been passed in the 60s and 70s, National Indian Council, National Indian Brotherhood, just to give you some examples, Canadian Confederation of Aboriginal People. So basically, number of social benefits, economic benefits, distinctive incentives that has been given to a lot of these specific group on the Aboriginal sides. On the civil society also, I think a lot of the policy development, lots of service delivery systems that has been given. And again, this is part of the uh, new public management. Today, I think we'll take care of the language, culture, and politics. As I've said, Canada was basically a unicolor, then became a mostly bilingual or a bicultural societies between French and Canada. That's why there is always this tussle and turf between Anglophone and Francophone. The Anglophone people, and you see places like Ontario, which is the largest province in Canada, they they feel that we are a British society of the British heritage, English language, etc. But in Quebec, just you cross few miles away from Ontario, it is mostly the French flavor that you see, the French colony, French literature, and the influence of the French architecture, etc. So there is always that tussle between Anglophone and Francophone. But lately, I think in the last 30, 40 years, because of the inflow of immigration to Canada, to different provinces and territories, Canada has increasingly become much more multicultural things. In terms of ethnic societies, as I've said before, Canada is torn between melting pot and salad bar. In ethnic discourse or ethnic literature, basically melting pot means people coming from different ethnic societies in ethnic varieties from different parts of the world in terms of greater opportunities, greater access to resources, greater upward mobility, job, finance, economy, you can name it. So when different people come from different strands, so that it is, let us say, from India, from Vietnam, from Philippines, from China, from Honduras, from Guatemala. I'm giving you some example from Italy, from Germany. When they come, there is one particular segment of population. They try to assimilate. They try to uh, mix and merge with the mainstream culture of Canada. Okay, if there is something called Canadian model, okay, and if you believe in that one, that is called a melting pot. So basically, all different ethnic varieties, ethnic diversities, they melt into one single entity or one single ethnic diaspora. That is called melting pot. On the other hand, the other theory that also the sociologists propound and they talk about is uh, the salad bowl concept. In the salad bowl, just like if you go to a restaurant, you go to a food outlet and you order or you ask for a salad bowl, basically they give you a combination or a mix of carrots, tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, all kinds of things. That is part of the uh, salad combinations. But in a context of sociological context, in a cultural context, in Canada, when we say salad bowl, it means people from different ethnic origins, whether it is Greek Canadians, Italian Canadians, Indian Canadians, Chinese Canadians, Jamaican Canadians, Guyanese Canadians, they all come up with their own distinct ethnic flavor or different ethnic primordialities. Okay, because they are born into that particular ethnic setup. It is very difficult to get it over with just because they went to Canada. Okay, so they maintain their cultural distinctiveness. All these different ethnic groups, no matter where they came from whichever part of the world, they maintain their own ethnic identities, their cultural identities, their cultural primordial characteristics. Okay, the rituals, the customs, whatever it is. So if you believe in that particular theory, then it is called a salad ball theory. So there is a big distinction between a monocultural, like a Anglo conformity, you conform to one particular tradition, you conform to Anglo-Saxon tradition, you merge all your identities into one single whole, one single piece. That is called melting pot. If you do not believe in that, you believe in maintaining the different cultural distinctiveness, uniqueness. At the same time, you want to take advantage of the Canadian, whatever Canadian mainstream society offers you in terms of economy, in terms of politics, in terms of jobs, etc. That is called cultural pluralism model. Okay, that is called a salad bowl model. And Canada, I think, is mostly in the last 30, 40 years, till since I would say 1970s onwards, it has become much more multicultural or multi-ethnic or in in those areas. And when we talk about ethnicity, we talk about ethnic solidarity, ethnic mobilization, ethnic enclave, ethnic pluralism, ethnic politics. Um, some people say ghettoization kind of things, like in America, you go to New York, you go to places like Bronx or Brooklyn, they're dominated by Afro-Americans. Okay, some people say this is America in certain places like Chicago, Miami, Cuban Americans. You go to Los Angeles, Hispanics, different places. Okay, so it has become much more ghettoized kind of people from one particular national origin. They prefer to stay together and they develop their own networks. And so in some places in Canada, like in, for example, if you go to Vancouver, there is little Punjab, there is little India, there is little China, that is little Greece, that is little Italy. You find all kinds of, for example, you go to Toronto, you see an area called Gerrard Street, and I've been there. You see some movie houses are there. They are showing Indian movies in Hindi language, in Tamil language, in Malayalam language, in Bengali languages. They've got all Indian restaurants, Indian food, Indian culture, drama, theater, cinema, um, all art and objects, etc. You go to Little China, they've got number of Chinese cultural theater groups, Chinese cultural artifacts, Chinese restaurants, all kinds of things. So there are different areas in big cities like Vancouver, like Edmonton, like Calgary, like Toronto, etc., etc. You see different aspects of that. So this is all different part of the ethnic enclave, and they also try to basically stick together. And that's usually a tendency of when a particular new ethnic group, they move into a new place, they try to band together. So this is again a part of ethnic mobilization, or you can say ethnic solidarity. Uh, and also, I think when I say ethnic politics, that has also become very, very important, at least in the last 30, 40 years. I mean, if you, again, I think here, I think this particular course is very important and very significant because we are talking, this is a course on diaspora and also migration. So people feel just like 10 people, 100 people, 10,000 people, they migrate. But you are just not migrating in terms of numbers. You are also migrating in terms of the, in its totality, in a much more cumulative way, taking the entire culture, all the good, the bad, all the baggages that you also carry over there. I mean, can you imagine that if you go today to the federal parliament in Canada, you will see a lot of people from Indian origin. A lot of the people who are from Punjab, who are from North India, from South India, they are holding important positions. They are holding cabinet positions in Canadian government. They are holding important positions. I think a couple of years ago, there was a person, I'm forgetting the name, Harmeet Singh or something. He was the defense minister of Canada. As I just said, in the NDP, New Democratic Party, the head of New Democratic Party, uh, uh, um, Jagmeet Singh. And there are many people from Indian origins, people who are contesting, some are winning, some are losing, but they are part. And the other interesting part of this ethnic politics is they are not only allied only with one particular party, they are in all political parties. You will feel people of Indian, Indo-Canadian diaspora, they are getting elected from the Liberal Party, from the Conservative Party, from the New Democratic Party. So I think in a way it is a sign, it's a positive sign that just like in America, there are Indo-Americans, Indian American diaspora, they are on both sides of the aisle. Just very recently, Kamala Harris, as you all know, she was the vice president of United States for 4 years during Joe Biden's presidency from 2020 to 24. And her mother was Shyamala Gopalan from Chennai, from Tamil Nadu. We have currently the vice president under Trump. His name is J.D. Vance. Okay, and he's coming to India tomorrow. Okay, on a 2-day trip. His wife Usha, she is from Guntur, from Andhra. Okay, so she's again the first lady's wife is sorry the second the vice president's wife. She is from Indian origin, from the Indian diaspora. There are, huge amount of Indian diasporic population. I'm just giving an example. In USA, they are elected. There are, I think, 5 or 6 members of Indian diaspora. They are members of the US Congress in the US legislature. There are members in the Nikki Haley, for example. She was a governor. Her original name was Nimrata Randhwa from Punjab. Their family migrated to US long time ago, and she was a cabinet member under Trump one administration. Okay, and she also contested for presidency. So a time may come in couple of years' time when we will see a contest between Indian versus Indian diaspora. Okay, maybe between Nikki Haley and Kamala Harris. Okay, or maybe somebody else. Okay, that is happening in Singapore. That is happening in Fiji. That is happening in Australia. Happening in Canada. So I think more and more you will see that Rishi Sunak. Okay, he's the son-in-law of Narayana Murthy. Okay, of Infosys. He was just the other day the Prime Minister of UK, United Kingdom. So you will see the Indian diasporic population as part of the ethnic politics. They're holding important positions at different very high levels. Okay. Uh, in terms of the cycle of immigration, I think it happened in different phases. Uh, if you go way back to the early 17th century, 1608, to for a long time, it was till 1760, it was the French culture, the French colonial rules that continued. Then from 1760 to roughly another 100 years till 1867, the British colonial empire, they took care of the language, the culture, and accordingly the Canadian society became much more anglicized, if you can use that word. From 1867 to 60s, then 60 to 70s and 80s, it was mostly industrialization, cultural modernization, etc., etc. And again, in the fifth phase, from 1976 onwards, the Quebec nationalism, the Quebec separatist movement, they took over, okay? A referendum took place that narrowly lost, okay? So that is again, so basically, I think in terms of immigration, in terms of the influence of cultures of like France and England, it has occupied very important positions, and that is reflected in the cultural heterogeneity, okay, of Canada in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of customs, in terms of rituals, etc., etc., in terms of education, in terms of getting a visa or getting an immigration. For example, if you know how to read, write, and speak French language, you get some extra bonus points to immigrate to Canada. Okay. In fact, to get admitted to Canada, if you can speak both English and French, that definitely helps you to getting those positions. Okay, Canada also has got some very robust educational collaboration with many countries in the world. In India, as I said, we have got NEP 2020, new education policy, under which we also promote internationalization of uh, Indian studies abroad. Our External Affairs Ministry, they have a program called Know India, Connect India. They have also programs like India Chair for Contemporary Indian Studies. This is again part of the India's public diplomacy, and they have chairs in Simon Fraser University, in Carleton University in Ottawa, and many other places. They in fact teach in languages like the Hindi language and other important languages over there. Uh, and part of the language, culture, and politics, Canada has also accepted lately a process of accommodation. Okay, accommodation means you listen to the other people's point of view, and you try to accommodate the other people's cultural sensitivity, cultural concerns. Um, for example, accession to Quebec's demand for an enhanced scope of fiscal and administrative autonomy, give them some room for flexibilities, constitutional review, constitutional reform that has taken place every couple of years, reform of the federal public service. If you can speak, read, and write French, you get some extra bonus points, you get some extra privileges. Uh, there is legal and constitutional recognition of the official languages. Uh, There is also another accord that took place called the Meat Lake Accord in 1987. Uh, it also tried to address the linguistic diversity of Canada and also the distinctive uh, nature of Quebec society, which is basically French. Okay, the constitutional veto for the provinces on certain matters like jobs, etc. The provincial participations, they tried to assert their own independence, their own autonomy, compensation for provinces who opted out of the national shared cost programs, stressing of provincial powers over immigration, etc. We have also got Charlton Accord that also is a one step forward than Meech Lake Accord. Inherent right to Aboriginal groups, okay, recognition of Quebec's distinct identity, uh, trying to provide more representation to the distinctive groups in the Senate, in the upper house, veto for uh, provinces on certain institutional issues. Uh, the referendum took place in Quebec in the year 1995. It was a very close referendum. The people who voted against Quebec being separated was 50.6, but the people who wanted Quebec to be an independent, separate entity was 49.4. So as you can see, it was a very close call between 50.6% to 49.4%. So it is almost like a 50-50. That's why the Canadian government has provided a lot of leeway, lot of flexibilities, and lot of autonomies to Quebec, only sort of granting full independence to Quebec. Okay, but other than that, they have maintained their own distinctive cultures in many different ways. Uh, on Unit 11, again, this is the continuation of the previous units. In terms of language, culture, and politics, we talk about ethnic and racial issues in a multicultural Canada. As I said, not many countries in the world today, you will see a federal department of multiculturalism. Canada, incidentally, they have a ministry, they have a department of multiculturalism at the federal level. What it does is it gives you a platform, a forum to air your views, to air your grievances, to air your thoughts. If you have some important policy inputs or feedback to offer, you can do that. So they have a multiculturalism ministry, and there is a cabinet minister in charge of that particular way. Okay. Uh, so again, Multiculturalism Act has taken place legally from 1988. Race is again another important aspect. Lately, people from different races, okay, and you have to separate the ethnic groups from the race, like Afro-American race, the Mongoloid race, etc., etc. And I think that is again being done in a much more inclusive way. Like our Prime Minister Modi in India, he talks about sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka prayas, and sabka viswas. Okay, sabka साथ सबका विकास means everybody's welfare, everybody's uh, progress, okay, everybody's improvement, okay. So I think in Canada, they also, in a way, they believe in this inclusive society, no matter where you came from, irrespective of your race, culture, ethnicity, ethnic origin, national origins, etc. You get the same benefit like anybody else, just because you are white or black or blue or pink or purple, doesn't matter, okay. And there are certain legal safeguards that are being that are also being guaranteed. Having said that, there is also a segment of Canadian population that strongly resent the inclusiveness. They try to maintain the, as I said, make Canada white again. Like Donald, there is a group of in US on the other side of the border, okay? They like to whitewashing of America, okay? So that is also an element, but that is a very minor group and a very small segment of the population. But I just want to highlight to you that yes, there is also a backlash against a biracial or a multiracial Canadian society. Ethnic diversity, whether you call it splendid diversity or a despised diversity, depending on which side of the ideological divide that you belong, but mostly people believe in a diverse society, in a multicultural society, in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society, where people can get along with one another. Okay. In terms of racial groups, British, French, German, Dutch, Ukrainian, Russian, Polish, Jewish, Native Indians, Inuits, Blacks, Chinese, Japanese, Greeks, Portuguese, Latinos, Jamaicans, Guyanese. I think if you just walk in the streets in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, I think every few yards you will come across people from different ethnic backgrounds. I think most of these things happened at the end of World War II because of the economic turmoil. And prior to that, the Great Depression, the economic depression of the 1930s. So I think for a variety of reasons, people tried to migrate. And when some people did go, so they try to take their family members. Then there are some new rules for family reunification, etc. And slowly and surely, the society become much more multicultural and multi-ethnic in that particular areas. Okay, regionalism and provincialism in chapter 12. Basically, I think Canada has tried to evolve a balance between centralization and decentralization. Centralization means all power leading towards or moving towards uh, the capital, Ottawa, okay, the federal government. Decentralization means you cannot do everything sitting there in one particular place in Ottawa, okay? So instead of a top-down approach, you need also have a bottom-up approach, okay? So you need to have a good judicial mix between centralization and decentralization. But having said that, there are also complaints on this issue of regionalism because particularly the provinces from the west, okay, the western sides, uh, uh, there are western provinces like British Columbia, like Alberta, etc. They feel that they are being taken for a ride. They are being taken for granted. So they are being milked. Okay. For example, Manitoba, they are very rich in coal resources, oil resources, gas resources. Saskatchewan, they are endowed with uranium. Same thing with Alberta and British Columbia. So they feel that they are naturally endowed with lot of rich resources. So why they have to feed the other provinces which are less endowed with natural resources? But as part of the inclusive approach of Canadian federal government, they tried to make a balance because like five fingers are not equal. Some provinces are very forward looking in terms of economic mobility, but some places are less uh, um, upward mobile in that particular policies. Okay, so some people even in British Columbia and Alberta, they say this is like a Robin Hood policy, like you basically steal from the rich and you give it to the poor, and that's not fair. Okay, if you are earning a lot of resources, you are earning a lot of taxes, a lot of duties, etc. You rather spend over there, okay? But the Canadian government tries to make a more level playing field, and that is also creating some kind of schism between the provinces and within the provinces. So there is this inter-provincial turf war and also intra-provincial kind of thing. The War Measures Act, some people, they support it and they also oppose it. Those people who support the War Measures Act that has been there for the last 58 years, they say this is heavily loaded towards the federal government. So in case of a emergency situation, in case of a war-like situation, the federal government assumes a lot of power. So some provinces, they resent that. They think it should not be the way. Rather, the provinces should also be endowed with sufficient amount of power so that they can also have a big say. So this tussle goes back and forth kind of things between the provinces as well as the federal government. The same thing goes with the Bill of Rights and other sensitive issues, including the language, etc., and reservation, how much power we need to give the Aboriginal people, etc. In terms of division of powers, how much we should allocate between the federal government and the state government in terms of trade, in terms of commerce, taxation, defense, currency, etc. And also how much power we should give to the provincial governments in case of a tussle, in case of a difference, in case of a dispute on issues like agriculture, in issues like immigration. Should we give them more or should we give them more? So there are all kinds of debate. But I think, in my opinion, debate is good, discourse is good. Let us listen to all sides. Maybe the outcome will be much more enriching in that particular ways. There are also declaratory powers, the dominance of federal government over the provincial governments. But I think the good thing is, for the most part, I think people are listening to one another across the provinces, even within the provinces. Like, for example, I can speak for Ontario. If you stay within the vicinity of the Toronto metro, the metropolitan areas of Toronto, you feel like you are in a different world. You just go 50 miles, 100 miles to the north. If you go to, let us say, to London, Ontario, to Waterloo, to Windsor, okay? It's a very huge state, okay? If you look, compare with India, I think it will be a combination of 3 or 4 states of India. But if you go to the Canadian side, on the Niagara Falls side, you go to places like Mississauga, you go to Hamilton, Guelph. I think those are very rural areas, very agricultural areas. So people have a very, what I would say, a very parochial views, a very ethnocentric views. They feel the federal, the big cities, they are taking away all the benefits, they are taking away all the goodies, all the privileges, etc., and not many benefits are being accrued to us, okay? Because the federal government taxes from everybody, so they should spend over there, okay? So I think that kind of tussle, that kind of turf is there, so that kind of debate is still there. So I think federal government is very much, and the provincial government also, they are very much aware of the sensitivities of all the different segments, because you cannot just exclude one another. You have to take everybody along, whether it is a rural community, agricultural communities, farming communities, and the people living beyond the suburbs, the beyond the metropolitan areas, okay? They also have their say, okay? So how those funding are being relocated, and also the competition over scarce resources, competition over funding, that kind of thing. But in my opinion, it is good to have a robust debate. It is good to have a more feisty debate. And maybe the ultimate outcome will be a good one. And I think that will be good for the provinces, both in the interior areas, and good for the federal government in general, in terms of Canada as a whole in a particular country. So I think that's the way, the right way and the correct way for a country to move forward. I think that's all I have to say today for this class. Any quick question or any quick comments?
Sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, why the Aboriginals are being called as Indian Aboriginals? Number one, sir.
Indian what? Indian?
Aboriginals in Canada.
Aboriginal tribes, yes.
Sir. So why is it so, sir?
It is called because, I mean, they are, I mean, this is, I remember when I went to US long time ago, like, people ask you, are you an Indian? I said, yes. But again, I have to say no, because I think when you say India, I used to say I'm an Indian, okay? That means basically I try to differentiate between Indian, a person coming from India to US to study, okay, or to work, whatever, okay, and a person who belongs to the native Indian tribes, okay, the natives who stayed there some 250, 300 years ago at the time of American independence, at the time of North America, okay? So when we talk about Indians, we talk about the native Indian tribes, the Inuits, the Métis, etc., okay, the people mostly living in the Yukon territories, living in Eskimo villages, etc. So we have to differentiate, we have to separate between the people from India, from the native Indians, okay? And you must have seen the movie like the Pocahontas, okay? The native Indians, the different tribes of Indians, they live in different parts, particularly in North America. Their numbers are very small. As I said, in Canada, for example, they're only 3%.
Yes, sir.
Mostly they are centered around those places in Northwest territories, Nunavut, in Yukon territories, and hardly anybody is there, okay? But they are important because these are, you can say, like endangered species. That's why government wants to protect them. So they are given some like protected status, okay? Just like in India, you can say like, if you remember, if you are a child, okay, if you go to place like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, or Nagaland, okay, you have got some tribal population, Adivasi populations, okay, and their number is getting depleted for a variety of reasons, okay. So the government of India, deliberately and consciously, they try to retain the distinctiveness of that particular population. So in a bigger way, I think in Canada, they like to retain the distinctiveness of this particular group. They are called the Aboriginal groups. They are called also the Indian group. Indian means the native Indians of Canada.
Sir, the second point, sir. Sir, as you said, Canada with its inclusive approach, at present is at peace with almost all nations, not having any conflict or even migration issues or no, or something like that.
Yeah, I think, again, I think I'm talking in a much more holistic manner, okay? But yes, if you look at some specific administration, like remember in the last time, couple of years ago, when Justin Trudeau was the prime minister, we had some issues as far
Yes,
as it is concerned,
except for
okay?
that.
Yes, in terms of immigration, in terms of issuing visa, etc., etc. Okay, but I think if you look in a broad way, in its totality, I think basically Canada follows a much more welcome policy. Okay, overall. Okay, but having said that, from time to time, Canada does follow certain times some policies which are very inimical to inclusiveness, certain policies which are very restrictive. Okay, but I think overall, if you look at their track record for the last 30, 40, 50 years, I think mostly, I think I would say it is very much inclusive, very much welcome. But it is also true that from time to time, they also have some measures which are very restrictive, which are very prohibitive, and they try to correct those things. For example, during Justin Trudeau's time, we had some tested with India, but I think now things are slightly getting better. Hopefully, things will get better and get back to where it was before.
Sir, thank you, sir.
All right. So thank you very much. Okay. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate that. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon and rest of the evening. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.